Tailoring PARAS delivery. As described in the key components video, to be effective there are certain components that need to be included within the PARAS programme. But how these components are delivered can be tailored to the individual need and to your service to enable use. Following our feasibility study, which was conducted in community stroke services, healthcare professionals highlighted that PARAS could be delivered earlier in the pathway for certain patients. We altered the workbook to enable this, but during our implementation study, where we observed real-world application of PARAS, it became clear that a slightly different approach was required to tailor PARAS to patients in inpatient settings. For example, the outcome measures used in the community had aspects that weren't relevant on the ward. Measuring physical activity prior to setting goals on the ward was also not relevant, and time constraints on the ward meant a more streamlined delivery approach was required. So some stroke survivors really enjoy slowly working through every section of the workbook. But remember that part 1 of the workbooks can be undertaken by the stroke survivor independently. This might be useful if they're waiting to be seen for an appointment in the community and might prepare the stroke survivors for future physical activity conversations. The whole home and community workbook could also be provided in a hyperacute stroke setting if a stroke survivor is being discharged with minimal follow-up. If the stroke survivor has been assessed as safe to undertake physical activity, they could be provided with the workbook to work through independently to enable prevention of further stroke and health problems. It's helpful to give this type of patient contact details in case they have any questions in the future. However, the workbooks are tools to support delivery of PARAS, and all the sections don't need to be completed if the key components of PARAS are discussed. And there's no need to replicate areas of PARAS that might already be undertaken with stroke survivors. For example, if your service already uses relevant physical activity and functional outcomes, you don't need to use the outcomes provided in PARAS as well if not necessary. If your ward already undertakes multidisciplinary goal setting, it's worth exploring how this is done and if there are any elements of PARAS that are not being undertaken that could enable this process. For patients with communication and cognitive problems who are safe to undertake physical activity, rather than using the workbook, it will likely be easier to use the communication ramps we have created with the icons supporting text. The workbook might be an option to consider though if family and friends are supporting this stroke survivor's rehab and could be engaged. PARAS was originally designed to be delivered one-on-one face-to-face. However, our implementation work indicated that other modes of delivery would be useful, for example group delivery. We've developed slides to promote discussions which could be used alongside the workbook or sections of the workbook in groups. If the groups incorporate structured exercise, PARAS could be used to help stroke survivors to think about activities to undertake on days when they are not at the group and activities they will continue after the groups. Many structured exercise groups are delivered for a limited time, therefore PARAS could be used to explore how stroke survivors will maintain physical activities after groups stop. Teams have used PARAS to support physical activity outside and beyond time-limited structured face-to-face exercise classes or life after stroke classes. Its use is also being trialled with online groups as a method of engaging stroke survivors who are waiting for an appointment in the community, and could be used with small groups on the ward.
A really good example was I was using the workbook with one of my stroke patients who was 99 years old. He's a very good example of a star patient, I would say, because he was kind of straight into using the workbook. He filled in all his outcome measures, and talked about his kind of well-being into detail and things as well. Got some really good feedback from him because he said that he really liked the activity choices page as well. He liked to kind of be more aware of the physical activity side. Wasn't just necessarily about walking and things like that. It was about the other activities like gardening or attending maybe like community classes and stuff. We utilize that workbook every session, and we built up his walking distance gradually, and later down the line we were gardening together, and it was a really nice experience. And it was something where we could look at the workbook and look at the goals, and he could see the progress he was making as well.
So I work in a stroke early supported discharge team, so I'm predominantly in the community, seeing patients on a one-to-one basis. So I've tended to use it with those patients who have maybe needed that little bit more encouragement or motivation to be a little bit more physically active, or maybe patients that are a little bit frightened to increase their activity levels. I have also used it in a group setting with patients in a Living Well with Stroke group that I was involved with. And during that, we talked about the principles of PARAS, talked about the benefits of exercise and some of the examples that other stroke survivors had came up with. And then just talked about the importance of setting goals around increasing physical activity, which sparked off extra discussion within the group. So I think that was really useful as well.
I think one of the things that we've also found really useful is being able for the PARAS sort of documentation to be quite flexible. So for some people, we've used the booklet and we've done it sort of as a complete. And for other people, we've used the resources where you can then just pick and choose sort of elements of PARAS that you want to use. And that means that you can really tailor it to an individual person rather than having to deliver exactly the same thing to exactly the same patient. And we found that has engaged people better because you can just make it a bit more individual.